Right then, guys. So it's just going to be a small group for us today. So the session is focused on our experience with children's hospice Christmas fundraising. It's quite a narrow subject matter. However, for those non-children's hospice fundraisers amongst us, welcome. I think there will be a lot of the key points that are salient and relevant to you guys as well. So it's a slightly different session from webinars we've delivered previously, in that you'd be delighted to know I'm not going to talk at you for an hour, and I'm really not going to talk at you for an hour. I just wanted to go through and just show you some stuff and show you some examples and just give you some thoughts about work that we've done previously. And then a quick recap of what the experience that we had in 2020 for Christmas, and then just literally some kind of questions about where do we think we're going to go to in 21. And I'd like to think that we can spend the second half of this session with all of us engaging, and for those that have specific experience and wisdom to share with everyone here, I'd encourage you to do that as well, but also to ask any questions that you have, not only for us but also for other members of the group. There are many experienced children's charity fundraisers here in this room, so I'd like to think that we can go away at the end of that having all learned something. Let me just go and get the, where are we? Okay, everyone see that okay? I'm looking for someone to nod. Brilliant, good. Okay, so we're talking about children's hospice campaigns, hopefully how to optimise income in 2021. And this, as we have done with all of our webinars, it's being recorded, and there's the data protection statement. You can come and see our stuff on the website. And what we'll do is a nicely edited version of this will be put on our website and on YouTube for re-watching. If you're having trouble sleeping of an evening, you can come back and look at this again. So to let you know that that's there as well. And what we're going to talk about, as I said, is just, I'll show you some past Christmas campaigns that we've worked on, just a few. I was totting them up yesterday. I think we're on 28 now, in terms of 28 children's hospice Christmas campaigns delivered, and there's a few more going to be happening this year. So there's a lot of experience and knowledge that we have, but we don't know everything. Yeah, there are some Christmas campaigns that have been delivered that are absolutely magnificent that we had nothing to do with, and it's all about grabbing what the best bits of those and then hopefully bringing that to how do we distill that down for our hospice this year. As I go, Lucy in our team, Lucy, if you can please listen out for any relevant questions. So if you've got something that's really specific and you want to ask about something I'm talking about right now, brilliant. If you could please use the chat function, and Lucy will be keeping those. Lucy, if there's something I need to just stop and cover immediately, let me know. But if it can wait till the end, then we'll pick those questions up at the end. And then what we'll try and do is cover those chat questions first. And then what we'll do, we'll come back to all of us on screen, and we'll just ask you to use the hands up button at the bottom of the screen there, where you put your hands up. So if you wanted to, so I'm hoping that everyone gets to ask the questions, or hopefully add the value, add the experience, add the point that they want to make. Yeah, and we'll do it that way if that's okay, and hopefully that'll work. All right. Okay, so just some stuff from our history. So Chestnut is the hospice that I have had the longest association with. So the first Christmas appeal I wrote for Chestnut Tree House was in 2006, and I arrived in the 11th of November 2006 to discover that there was no Christmas fundraising whatsoever at the Children's Hospice, because it's a joint service and everyone was focused on Light Up a Life for the adult hospice. So me being the slight idiot that I am, just said, well, why don't we just do a Christmas appeal? And the worry was, particularly from the trustees, dirty begging letters going out. We don't want to be involved in that. And I said, well, actually, you know what, let's share this. And there was a database of about 2,000 supporters of Chestnut. So I wrote a simple letter. It was literally a letter in a form and a response right in a plain envelope saying, this is Christmas, they're caring for kids over Christmas, this is what it costs, could you contribute? And it went to 2,000 people and it raised £25,000, which was amazing, but they'd never been asked before. So, you know, you always get a good response the first time. But the key thing for the trustees was there was no complaints. And that was the most important thing. And that opened the door to this individual giving, and that's where individual giving started for Chestnut. And over the years, we've delivered a large number of differently styled Christmas appeals for Chestnut. I wanted to pick this one to start with because it's kind of brings together everything that all of our thinking and ethos about Christmas fundraising. The first thing is that it's all based on the child. So we met Jude, and this campaign was called Jude's Christmas Wish. So we met Jude in the summer of 2016, and Jude was a 6-year-old lad who had essentially no functioning internal digestive system and was waiting for a transplant at Portsmouth General for large intestine, small intestine, various other bits and pieces, pancreas, spleen, etc., etc. And as a result, he couldn't eat food and had never eaten food. And he had a backpack that he wore constantly. I don't know if you can just see in that little picture there, there's the straps of the backpack on. That backpack holds 3 litres of fluid that goes straight into his heart through a central line and keeps him alive. And yet, despite that, he played football, he was out on his BMX doing stunt jumps in the back garden. We went to see him. He'd just recently won a massive trophy because he'd entered on the spur of the moment a breakdancing competition. And had done some spins and tricks on his backpack, you know, with doing breakdancing. He was this incredibly active, engaging little lad. And so the story that we told was of his Christmas wish. And this was these little icons that you can see here. So the Christmas pudding is there because he'd never eaten solid food. And his first Christmas wish to be able to eat Christmas dinner, because he'd seen his brothers and sisters eat it and his mum and dad, but he'd never eaten food himself. He wanted to eat solid food, but he needed the transplant in order to make that happen. The Christmas tree was about having a Christmas at home, because most of his Christmases in his life, he'd actually been in hospital. He'd been in and had his line changed 37 times at this point. He wanted to be able to play football. He wanted to be able to meet Santa. And there's all these things, and the stockings about presents, etc. So there's all these things that he wanted to achieve in his life that actually reflected the kinds of objectives that many of the kids and families that attended Chestnut had. So this campaign was about achieving Jude's Christmas wish, using these, as it was, 7 different, he wanted to build a snowman, which is why the snowman's there, using these 7 different little icons as elements of that. There was a fundraising target here, if you can see it. Let me just move you guys, you're on the move top of my screen, there you go. So there was a fundraising target of 116,450, and that's basically the cost of running Chestnut for the Christmas holidays. Okay, so there was a tangible nature of the target. And as you'll see later on, there's a specific amount that we asked for. And Jude contributed his own words and thoughts. The appeal was voiced by Kelly, his mum, and it was wonderful because Kelly was a neonate nurse in the local hospital, so she understood and she cared for little babies herself, and she understood that what was going on into the process. So she was the voice of that. And they also, the 2 of them, did little vox pops, did little things. So Kelly created a little diary, a little sort of Jude's Christmas diary, just little things on a phone that were then edited down and uploaded onto the website and sent out to social media. But each of these little things here, each of these 7, meant that each week, it was launched 7 weeks before Christmas, and each week one of these little themes was launched about food. Why is food important at Christmas? Well, Christmas dinner, actually, kids can come in and have a Christmas meal at Chestnut if they're not able to manage it at home. What about a Christmas tree? Or how can they meet Santa? Well, actually, Santa comes into the kids' hospice. There's all these opportunities to use these 7 little different motifs and to keep that story fresh and keep that narrative going and keep updating it throughout Christmas. And luckily, we had Jude and Kelly, who are both up for being part of that. So this is kind of a distillation. The last thing was each of these 7 icons here were turned into engagement cards. So each of these images became part of the direct mail pack for responders, not only to send a donation in, but also to send in a message of love and good wish and happy Christmas and whatever they wanted to do back into the hospice. And that's been a key theme of all of our work. Right from the very early days for kids hospices. It's not, for me, it's not just about getting the money in. I don't want the children's hospice to be positioned over here, and you can give some money to this thing that's all the way over there, and then there's no relevance to you. I want the donor to have engagement, to feel that they are contributing to the ethos and the effect and the joy that is delivered at Christmas in the hospice. Okay, so each of these became a little card in the pack that people would send back with their words and their donation. So it's a good kind of little distillation, yeah, of the kind of appeals that we would send out. Okay, so that's the chestnut one. Let's look at this. So I'm seeing Ellie here. Ellie in our team was at Northern Ireland Hospice when we worked together on this. And Ellie, if you remember, again, a good example of how the creative comes from the child for this one. So Jude became this active, we created this little cartoon character of Jude because he was this incredibly active little boy and we wanted to show that, but we didn't have the, the photos, etc. at the time. We couldn't put that in the DM pack. This is Shannon, and we met Shannon in an old aircraft hangar at some sort of at 3/4 an hour's drive outside of Belfast, and she'd gone for a princess day. They had this basically this aircraft hangar. Half of it was this football experience thing, and the other half was a Disney princess experience thing. Yeah, and Shannon was in the Disney princess experience, and she'd gone to meet Elsa from Frozen, right? And there were these two amazing local girls who were perfectly dressed up with all the wigs and the clothes, and they did the accents, and they knew all the songs, and they sang the song. And Shannon was in her chair, and we talked about what she wanted, and she just absolutely loved that. So we ended up creating Shannon as her own little princess in this. And the main campaign comes from her mum, who talks about the challenge of her care, the challenge of her experience, and the benefit that she gets from Northern Ireland Hospice. And the title was Little Stars of Hill because that was the name of the campaign that the whole hospice used. We fitted in with that. And so again, there's an involvement device. This time simply a star because it's little stars. So the message was all of the kids that come here are little stars. Actually, we want to put some of that sparkle into their lives. Here's how you can do that. Yeah. So the creative came from the campaign story in that case. This is Chestnut the year after Jude. So we'd been lucky enough to sign up Raymond Briggs as a patron quite a few years before. And he had allowed the hospice to create the Snowman Spectacular Ball, which is a fundraising ball. The first one happened in 2008 and basically broke even. I think the charity spent 35,000 and raised 35,000 the first year. 10 years later, it was clearing £500,000 profit on the night. But it was, again, a slow build. But we were allowed to use a Snowman Spectacular, and there were certain images that Raymond had created that were outside of the book because there was ownership rights issues about the book and that kind of thing. And we'd never been allowed to use the Snowman, but we just went for it in the summer of 17 and said, look, if we could, we think we could do something Snowman-y. And it was pitched to the rights owners, expecting them to say no. And they turned around and said, oh yeah, fine, crack on. So brilliant. So the Snowman became the theme for the next 3 years. And this one was, again, bringing in the Snowman, that familiar theme. And here you can see the key ask here. So this is Chestnut. This has been Chestnut's ask at Christmas for the last 10 years. It costs £35.70. Sorry, where's my pointing on the air? £35.70 to pay for 1 hour's nursing care for a life-limited child. And that's the tangible ask that is the most successful and the most important ask. And we've done various things with that. We've halved it to allow people to pay for half an hour of care in the pool, for example. We've multiplied that by 24 to turn that into a day's care for one child. We've multiplied that right up to pay for the entirety of Chestnut's care for the whole of one day as pay for a day, which is a high value proposition for 6,850 quid. But it all comes back down to the tangibility of the care, and that care is illustrated with the stories. So this is Victoria, and we tell in a 4-page A4 letter, which I know will terrify you. In a 4-page letter, we tell the story of Victoria and how she lost 2 of her 4 young children to the same condition. But actually, the fact that Chestnut was there for all 4 of her kids and her and her husband as well, and how the Snowman is become a part of their Christmas Day ritual. There's a tree in the woods near where they live, and they go and visit the tree, and there's a little hole in the tree, and they put little presents and gifts for the 2 children in the tree, and then they come back and they have dinner and then watch the Snowman at home. And so it's by bringing in the reality of how that care actually affects a specific family, and there's the £35.70 reflected in the ask there. It gives that tangibility. So as you can see, every single story has got a really strong, powerful case study. And I'll talk about case studies more specifically in a second. Right, Brighton House. An interesting one in that the case study we were given to work with here was Jack. Here's Jack. He was 16 and he has Duchenne muscular dystrophy. And Jack was the most talkative 16-year-old you've ever met in your entire life. Absolutely passionate about so many things, wanted to help, wanted to talk about his relationship with Brighton House. Brighton House up in the Fylde Coast with Trinity Hospice in Blackpool. And what Jack, we ended up with Jack talking about all the things that again he wanted to do, and we ended up with 12 Wishes of Christmas. So it's the 12, it's the song, but it's again related back to the real experiences of hospice care at Brighton House. So we've got the one big Christmas tree, my favourite, 2 Christmas llamas, because which children's hospice does not get visited by Christmas llamas every Christmas? And if you don't, then I immediately urge you to go and find some llamas to bring in. They're fantastic. So the nurses singing, because the nurses at Brighton House they do a little choir and they go around and do a little carol concert at the kids' hospice. So we talk about 3 nurses singing, bags of sorting, gold corners, children splashing. So we talk about the hydrotherapy pool, etc., etc. So we tell the story again of all the different ways that children's hospice care impacts families and impacts care like Jack. My favourite memory of Jack was he was mad about food. Loved his food and was really adventurous, wanted to try new stuff all the time. And at that time he was mad about Japanese food, right? He was completely nuts about Japanese food and he just wanted to go to Tokyo and experience and go and eat all this mad food. And we got back to the office and I thought I'll just have a look, and I managed to find on Amazon from Japan an assortment of Kit Kats and M&Ms in like really weird Japanese flavors in this kind of gift box. So we got one of those sent to him. There was a wasabi Kit Kat. I mean, who is that wasabi Kit Kat? But he was just, we managed to get this food to him. But again, same kind of thing in that there were some involvement devices based around these things, based around these ideas about don't just give us your money to care for people like Jack. Give us your engagement as well. Give us that motivation, yeah? Rainbows from last year. Raj, looking at you. So rainbows from last year. Obviously, the challenge last year is that basically the hospice itself is shut for everything apart from urgent emergency care. So how does Rainbows reach out to the children and families in its community? Well, they put together a Rainbows bus. There was literally a minibus and Santa and volunteers. The objective was to reach out and try and get to as every kid in the East Midlands, if at all possible, with a visit from Santa and a present from the hospice. And so again, based on that interview and based on that story, the Santa bus was created, and that became the meme and the theme, yeah, for the Christmas appeal there. And Harvey, beautiful little lad, died at 7 months old, and Charlotte, very kindly, his mum, shared very openly and freely the story of Harvey's care. That's a 2-page A4 lift letter. In that pack. I'll talk about case studies in just a second. I added this. I asked Lucy after this in because I just like the reindeer. Again, we had they have a visit from Santa and reindeer. This is Clare House for 2014, and the simple tale of this is the lift. This is the case study here. Here's telling you about the care, etc., etc. Here's Bev, physiotherapist in this case, and again I'll talk about voices. Physios just say, look, this is what we do, and here's how we bring care. And this is because Ellie here, her best thing was the hydrotherapy pool, and so a lot of the story is about the physio that she received in the hydrotherapy pool, and that was what she really valued. So the right person to talk about that was Bev, because she had the relationship with Ellie. So those are the voices in here. But we had the reindeer, so we created again these four cartoon reindeer. So each of these faces were there, and so people were asked to send their messages of love and support, etc., back on a reindeer. So there was all these reindeer all over the place inside Clare House. And then this one is the least visually interesting, in that it's an engagement device. It's a simple story. You can see there's the front of the envelope, or you can see we use reverse window here. So we just gives us a bit more space for the imagery. So we've got simple stockings here. The stockings being obviously the theming the presents and the gifts that are coming to the kids, and these are the involvement devices. So we die cut different stockings, so everyone would send back their own message of support, love in the stockings, and these were all strung up around the hospice for Christmas. But visually quite subdued. No big cartoon characters in this one, and that's because we were telling the story here of Andrew, who died. This is 2014, so he died in 2011, age 13. And of all the ones that you've seen, I've saved this one till last because this was, pound for pound, this was the most successful Christmas appeal that we've ever delivered, with the least amount of visual interest, I think. And I think it's because of the story. I don't know this, and I don't know there's any way to actually prove this. Andrew was completely fit and healthy. And the story is that when he was 11, he collapsed on the football pitch. And it was discovered literally at half time. It was discovered that he had a brain tumor, and he lived for a further 18 months, and he died at home, supported by Chestnut's nurses. And of all the stories we've ever told, and these are just Christmas stories, we've delivered many fundraising appeals for kids' hospices. I think there is yet to be any kind of definitive evidence of which are the stories that really make the difference, that really pull in. Those tangible ones, those ones that really illustrate children's hospice care, of course. But we've told stories about tiny babies, neonates, about 23-year-olds, about an 18-year-old that actually died on Boxing Day at the hospice. The strongest reaction was this to Andrew, and I think perhaps it's because Andrew, people empathize, people see their own children and grandchildren in the story, whereas the stories we tell of those children that are born with severely challenging conditions are sad. For the average layperson, are sad and distressing, but there is something preordained there is something pre-existing, whereas Andrew was this normal, sorry to use that word, but you know, unchallenged lad who then became seriously ill and then needed children's hospice care. There's also the knowledge that we have, for example, from adult hospice care, where we know that if we put a raft of propositions in front of a donor audience and say, what do you care about? They'll say, oh, everything. But if you actually then give them some money and ask them to make a donation back to, it's end of life care in the hospice always wins, and end of life care in the home that comes as a sharp second after that. So it's these stories, I think, that illustrate the actual end-of-life care journey, I think, are the ones that have the greatest resonance. And I suspect, although I have no evidence for this, that I suspect it's those narratives that where people can self-identify with the story, as opposed to, oh, that poor unfortunate family over there, someone that looks and feels and sounds like them and then becomes in a situation, I think, is more resonant. But the challenge we have there with case studies is that we can never choose. We know how difficult it is for a family to share their own experience, and the concerns and the need to work with clinical staff to make sure that this is a collaborative effort, that we are comfortable, that we are not putting a family in a difficult situation because we want to tell a sad story. I have yet to find in 28, whatever it is, Christmas appeals, and Lord knows how many other appeals, I've yet to find the case study that isn't amazing and moving and emotional and dynamic. It's just grabbing that story, and there's always something. There's always a little hook in there. There's always a little thing that you never expect. The example I'll give you was from one of the other Chestnut Christmas appeals, where we created a little cartoon cat because the girl had a little toy cat, and we created a cartoon. It was a favorite toy, and we created a cartoon character of it. She was had no motor function, but she loved tactile play. So she loved the kind of hands in water or dried rice and lentils and that kind of thing. She really loved that. And she loved in the autumn dried leaves being piled up, and they would chuck all these dry leaves over her. And she died when she was 8.5, and she would love that. And so after she died and she was lying in the bereavement suite, when she left the bereavement suite to go to the ambulance, to go to the funeral a few days later, rather than go straight to the ambulance, the staff had actually gone out in the back garden and piled up a load of leaves because it was October, and they took her bed through this big pile of leaves one last time before putting her into the ambulance. And she died over a week beforehand. But actually, that was the moment, that was the little hook for that story. But that's the tiny detail of dedication and engagement, involvement. And those are the kinds of little moments that I think jump out and grab the audience. So when we're talking about case studies, it's quite easy, I think, for every story to go medical challenge, problem, solution, incredible care, play therapy, isn't it wonderful, homely appeal, Christmas, can you give us some money? We could all do that every year. But what's the little magical moment? What's this tiny nugget that actually just lifts that story out and makes it more unique and individual? Right, shutting up about previous examples now. So just want to very quickly just download some brief thoughts on last year. So delivered a number of Christmas appeals for children's hospices last year. So overall, response from core audience was about 50 to 100% higher. So we saw, I know several children's hospices ran emergency and recovery and resilience appeals and saw very good responses and a lot of good online responses as well. Where we went out with a focus campaign, particularly with direct mail, we saw a significant uplift in user response. And I think that's partly because of recognizing the need, recognizing the unique situation. But the story there was all about the fact that Christmas was not normal, Christmas was missing, and how do we replace some of that? So here, this is an image of the Demelza elves going out and delivering Christmas to kids all around, all throughout the Kent and the southeast. The thing that we really focused on was reactivating older supporters, and that was extremely successful. Where GDPR allows, and this does get us into a GDPR conversation about have you got full opt-in, have you got legitimate interest, what's your privacy policy, what are the rules around communication. There was an opportunity last year, and we'll talk about this year, about going back to people who used to be magnificent supporters of the Kids Hospice, but who hadn't given for a while yet, and reaching back out to them and saying, guys, I know it's been a while, but we really need you this year because of this unique situation. And where we did that consistently, they responded, particularly those donors with a higher value and a longer standing relationship history with the hospice. They hadn't given for a while. Going back out to them and talking to them in those terms, Mr. Smith, hi, it's us. I know it's been a while. We're coming to you because we really need everyone who cares about local children's hospice care to get involved this Christmas. And they came back in and reactivated, yeah? And I know from work we've worked with many charities where the implications of GDPR and privacy policy and opt-in and legit interest decisions made back when GDPR was introduced have put a straitjacket around them and have made things extremely difficult. There are some solutions to that, and there are some ways to remove those shackles, but it's a job of work and it does take some time, but that can be done. But where we've been able to go back to older supporters, we have reactivated them. And also cold recruitment as well. I'm going to bang on a little bit, just a little bit about cold recruitment, in that this is Christmas for me is the opportunity. We've tried cold recruitment at different times of the year. Christmas when it works most strongly because it's children, it's local life limited children at Christmas, and you can be part of that of their story. And so for me, this is the opportunity for cold donor recruitment, and we would deliver that through traditional means, through door drops. The experience of Chestnut over many years was delivering usually somewhere between 600 and 700,000 door drops. And those would break even. We wouldn't make a profit on those in year one, but we'd make our money back. And then, of course, we've got a new batch of donors to then go on and give secondary donations and come into the profit there. The challenge for all children's hospices, even though an adult hospice can't possibly deliver this because the catchment areas are too small, children's hospices, you've got bigger catchment areas. But even with those, the numbers become so small, it becomes so difficult to run the kind of campaign that a national charity would feel very comfortable with, which is large amounts of communication, bring in some new prospects, etc., and then use direct communication, for example, either online or hopefully DM or ideally phone, to actually talk to those people and then convert them onto regularly giving products if you possibly can. That classic route, that is often not possible for an individual children's hospice because of the sheer scale. You can't generate enough traffic in order to make that kind of pathway work. The solution to this, guys, for all of you in children's hospice land looking at this, is to join together and do something and coordinate. I've done this before for national charities where we're actually a collection of local charities disparate joining in with the whole. It does work, it can happen, but there has to be. There is a group, I know there are some of you watching here, there are a group that are involved in that kind of collegiate decision making and looking at opportunities to share. The way the children's hospice movement is going to make cold recruitment at Christmas work is by all joining in and sharing the cost and sharing the opportunity and allowing that kind of donor recruitment and development pathway to exist, but for everyone's mutual benefit. Yeah. So there are conversations to be had about how you deliver that. It is possible, but it's going to need you guys working together. Media, we looked at media. Direct mail worked hugely strongly. Social media was great. Lots more engagement on social and digital this year than we'd seen in previous years. I think many of you have experienced that. What we found though, when we did the reviews of where money comes in, yes, social is bringing in significant amounts of money, and I know that there are hospices out there that did digital only campaigns for in emergency or resilience, etc., and have had really strong results. Yet we saw that too, but what we saw was about a third of income comes in on digital, and 2/3 comes in an envelope. Yeah, some people who respond to a direct mail pack are responding online because we give them that option, obviously, but the vast majority are still coming back with traditional donations and traditional media. And if we think about the target audience, the likely demographic of, it's still the baby boom generation that represent the majority of money in the individual's database of the vast majority of our charities, then the way to communicate with those has to be something that they're going to engage with, and a lot of people are not going to engage with your social media content. And I think sometimes we fool ourselves. We have this magnificent social media delivery system. We think, oh, brilliant, look at all these messages we're putting out. And we're not actually aware that there's a significant part of our core donor audience, as opposed to eventers or parts of etc., that are just not going to see these messages. So we've got to employ a range of media as well. So obviously we looked at, it's very important for Christmas, direct mail, door drop for cold, but also engage with social media, Facebook ads, Insta. I know some people are using TikTok successfully last year as well. Obviously email to those audiences. But again, our challenge here is that there's the GDPR implications. Worked with one charity, which will totally remain nameless, who brand new head of fundraising came in early last year to discover that the charity had gone full opt-in, but hadn't actually asked anyone to opt in, effectively therefore wiping out their entire database. And that included email as well. So they'd never asked for permissions on email. So even though they had thousands of email addresses, so the decision was made to basically just say that was a terrible, terrible mistake, and we're going to pretend it never happened. So they went out with a DM pack with new privacy and options, etc., which they shouldn't have done. But they were a very successful campaign, and they've now introduced a new policy. Wouldn't advise that, but there's challenges here around how you're allowed to access data. Timing is another thing. So when does Christmas begin? Having delivered Christmas appeals for the majority of my 28 years of being a fundraiser, because I am well old, my sweet spot for Children's Hospice direct mail is the second week of November. And the reason for that is because I'm trying to get in before everyone else. I'd like people to give me their Christmas donation before every other charity asks them for it, because it's hugely successful. 20% of all individual giving is given over the Christmas period in the UK. So it's an incredibly important time, but I want to get in there first if I possibly can, but not too early. You know that thing when you walk into the supermarket, you go, oh my God, they've got Christmas trees already, or you've got pumpkins already, and you're appalled, yeah? There's that kind of moment where we want to get past that, where you think, oh, okay, I understand. And this, bless you, Ali, this, right, the involvement device and the engagement device, I think, is really important and quite crucial for this, because there's a timing necessity on this. We need the donor to respond by giving us the money that makes the care at Christmas possible, and we need them to come back with their contribution of emotion and humanity, so that our staff, the nurses, etc., have got time to actually put those messages up and around the hospice. And we've put messages bloody everywhere, in terms of every room, corridors, in the swimming pool, multi-sensory room, in Santa's grotto, part of that as well. Famously, one time for Chestnut, I think in the early 2010s, we literally wrapped the whole house in a big red ribbon, and everyone's messages were part of that big red ribbon. And a helicopter went up and actually took some shots. It was on local news and all that kind of stuff. So we've done kind of every iteration of that, but it gives a deadline. It gives some urgency to the campaign as well. It's not just, oh, wouldn't it be lovely if? It's no, there's a job for you to do here. We need you to give us the money so that we can afford the nursing care. And it's always important we've got the care and the fun as well. The nursing care delivers the opportunity for these incredibly challenged children to have a great Christmas experience, but you can be part of that experience, but we need you to get back to us in time to put this together so that when they turn up for the Christmas party or the Christmas holiday season, whatever it is, there's a thing there. Yeah, so there's a nice opportunity. That's for individuals. The one audience I say that I think that doesn't apply to is corporate. And I'm just going to talk about corporate in a second. How long should the campaign run? If you talk to Amy and Chelsea and our team, will say to you that you can't just launch a campaign and then simply just repeat the same thing over and over and again, which is why we've tried so often to have that staging approach where we possibly can, to have the different elements, adding to the narrative as we go. So that Jude's Christmas wish, that first one we showed you right at the beginning, was a good example. 7 different things that he wanted to achieve, all were linked back to him, but also back to how children's hospice care works. There was a different part of the narrative we could release once a week for 7 weeks. And it runs right up to Christmas. I would want every kids hospice to make sure that someone can go onto the website and actually buy a donation as a gift for a loved one on Christmas Day and Boxing Day. Yeah. And I'd also want to make sure that every donor that you've got an email address for, there is a thank you, a photo, whatever it's going to be, an email from the nurses or from a family that arrives on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day going, look what you did. We asked you to help. We asked you to be part of Christmas this year. Look at what you've achieved. Look at these images. This is you in action. You have a fabulous Christmas. Thanks to you, we're going to be able to look after the kids. We'll speak to you in the new year. Yeah. So having that time and that planning, the feedback and the reward of showing the donor what they've achieved is absolutely part of Christmas. And that has to be part of the timing as well. And then creative, finally, quickly, case studies. We've talked about that. It's really difficult. This was a Brian House campaign from the year before Jack. Beautiful lad, Charlie, who'd passed away a year or so previously. And the campaign was about being superheroes, about, you know, being a superhero to a child like Charlie this Christmas. Every story is magnificent. And it's, again, for each child and each occasion, whether that child has passed away, whether that child is still receiving care, there are some incredible moments of achievement and success and joy and happiness that the incredibly detailed and professional and expert medical care has made possible. Yeah. And I think the most successful stories are where we show both of those. It's not just always, it's not a play center. Yeah. Children's Hospice is an incredibly specialized and expert care center for children with massively complex problems. But by delivering that, we open the door to kids being kids and families being families and time together and experiences and fun. So let's talk about both of those. Voices, we always like to talk in the direct and honest and straightforward voice of the people that receive the care, the people that give the care. When I was director of income generation for Chestnut back in 2006, 2007, no one ever heard of me. No one should, in my view, no one should ever hear from a fundraiser unless it's like an administrative thing, you know, in terms of these voices, who receives the care, who gives the care. And when we speak in their voices, it's got to sound like them. So over the years, we've written very many case studies and appeals from nurses and physios and play therapists and parents and siblings in some cases as well. But it's all about real. It's all about reality and honesty and directness. You don't need to gild the lily here. The story of children's hospice care is always magnificent and moving and astonishing and surprising and inspiring. We just have to tell the story, but we have to do that, I think, in an honest way and get away from that marketing speak. You know, parents and nurses do not sound like professional trained marketers, so when we communicate, we shouldn't either. Design approach, you've seen quite a lot of cartoony kind of stuff here, and I'm really aware that I've just said to you that the most successful appeal was the one that had the least stuff going on. And again, I think that's based on the story. The design approach comes from the story, but it also usually comes from the fact that there isn't a lot of media, particularly where you have you're telling the story of a child that's passed. You're relying on the parents' photo library, which is usually these days on their phone, and there's usually not there's not a lot of amazing photographic content that we can pull and rely on. So we're quite often restricted in the photography that we can use, which brings therefore well, how do we actually illustrate? How do we get that positivity, that you know, engagement forward? And there's always an engagement involvement device. Yeah, I will stand by that till my dying day. There's got to be an opportunity for the donor to be part of this experience that you're telling them is possible with their help, not just it's over there behind this big wall, just chuck some money over the wall and then go away and have your own Christmas. I don't want to do that. I want to get people engaged and involved, because I think that engagement involvement, that leads to further donations and it leads to legators in the future. Yeah. Right. Shutting up. So questions for 2021. Is this an opportunity to reach out to older supporters one more time? Or if you've not done it before, could you go back to people that haven't given to you for, we were getting donations from people who hadn't given for 20 years. Yeah, because we use legitimate interest, because direct mail is a legitimate usage of their data. We were getting donations from people who hadn't given to the Kids Hospice for 20 years going, brilliant, yeah, I'll come back, because they've been asked. And if you've ever now, this Christmas, got a reason to go back and say, I know it's been a while, Fred, but can we talk to you about children's hospice care? This is the year that gives you the excuse to do that, yeah? Should you invest in cold recruitment? I think yes. I think that's got to be careful. It's got to be targeted. You need to invest in, I think, some online and a combination of online and offline. It's got to be an investment. We had this conversation with someone just a day or so ago. You are not going to make a shed load of cash from cold recruitment, but what you can do is build a foundation for the development of future income by expanding your donor base. But it's got to be an investment program, recognizing you have to invest upfront. And what's the proposition for this year? Just having a nice Christmas, I don't think that's enough. The serious medical challenge, I think we've always got to talk about that. So how do we bring in both of those? I'm intrigued with this kind of a double Christmas for kids, as I call it, which is last year, for a healthy child, losing a Christmas experience is sad. But hey, we're back this year. For a life limited child, where they're not going to have a childhood's full of Christmas, worth of Christmases, and where they lost last Christmas, and because of their condition, they're probably isolated at home last Christmas, to have the opportunity of having Christmas this year, and it might be their last, for me, this has got to be the most important thing. This could be the last Christmas experience. This could be the most important day in this family's life, and we need to be there to support that. So for me, that's the kind of power that we have, the opportunity we have to discuss this year. Investment in different media, we talked about. We've got to invest sensitively across online, offline. And we talked about launch, and this is where I just very briefly want to talk about corporate. A couple of charities that we're working with, looking at this overall proposition. It's not just a proposition for individuals. It's not just a direct mail or individual giving campaign here. This is the hospice reaching out to its entire community and saying, this is the opportunity, this is the problem, this is the solution, this is how you engage. Corporates are really, really struggling at the moment, as we all know. My view is that we have the opportunity this year to offer our corporate partners the chance to be part of Christmas and engage and have the feedback and the well-being of getting back in and being part of this re-emergence of children's hospice care, even if they can't give us any money this year. If they're struggling and they haven't made the money and they've had staff on furlough, I don't want to put a barrier, a no entry sign up in front of them that says, sorry, without any cash, you can't come in. I want to use the opportunity to be part of this amazing Christmas hospice experience of, we all know what it's been like to be away for the last 18 months and not to be able to do what we've done. Come back, even if you can't give us any money, come and be part of that engagement. Help us by marketing, help us by promoting, help us by sharing the brand, yeah? Because I'm looking at this as an opportunity to create relationships and friendships that will then come to fruition next year or the year after, when they're back on their feet and they're making some profit and they want to put something back in, yeah? So that's why I think this campaign, for me, for corporates, I'd want to start talking to my corporate audience in September after the school holidays finish. I'd want to go and say, you can be part of this. If you can give us some financial support, fantastic, and here are some options for you. But if you can't, the door is wide open to you. Let's get you engaged. Let's get your staff engaged as well. And we'll keep that relationship going for future years, yeah? And again, what's the campaign look like? It depends. There's Shannon again. It depends on the story. Yeah, it depends on what we've got. It depends on the story. But I don't think we should go into this with the preconceived ideas about this is what a children's hospice campaign looks like. Yeah, we should look at that. Right, not too bad. 45 minutes. Okay, so in a second, we're just going to go and get your contributions and thoughts, please, and questions. Just before I switch this off, just to let you know that I've recently just recorded a pre-record webinar about trust fundraising with Andrew as our head of trust and corporate fundraising. Absolutely fascinating, really interesting time for trust fundraising, and it's just kind of a distillation. It's basically me and him rabbiting on, and when we edited it down, so it's actually nice and nice and concise for once. But it's actually been a really interesting session. So if that's interesting, please have a look at that. I'll send it on to your trust fundraiser as well. And thanks very much for watching this. Small sales pitch at the end of this. We are not here to sell us. we are here to help you deliver the thing you want to deliver if you don't have the resource in-house to be able to do that. Okay, that's our role. For some of the children's hospices we support, we are effectively the individual giving department because they haven't got the in-house resource to be able to do that. Wonderfully, elsewhere we have been that, but now we're backing out and actually handing over an understanding and a process and an experience back to the in-house team who are then delivering it. For other hospices, Raj, for you, for example, you know, we are your creative guys and we come and do some creative and you tell us what you think and we deliver that for you. We are here to help and offer advice and support. The one thing we can do, if you've not had an individual's data analysis from us, we offer that for free to every children's hospice. We can take your data of supporter data and we can compare that against an accumulated national average of children's hospice data sets, and we can tell you what we think. And what we can show you is your donor pyramid in quite stark detail. So if that's interesting to you, you can come and talk about that. It doesn't cost anything. There's no obligation on that. We're happy to have that discussion. Right. So enough from me. Escape from that. Hello, everyone. I hope that's been useful in a quick 45-minute brain dump download. Lucy, are you there? Hello. Have we got any questions in the chat that we need to look at?
Not yet, no.
Okay, so guys, come on, this is your time to shine. So when you put it, there's a down the bottom, where are reactions? If you go to reactions at the bottom of the screen, okay, there's the little hand wave thing, raise hand. So if you raise your hand, there you go. Lou, you're in first. Brilliant stuff. Hello, good morning.
Hello, thank you ever so much for that. That was incredibly insightful and very useful. My question is, has anybody had any experience of running a campaign alongside a live event? So our idea for Forget Me Not this year is to run our Christmas appeal, but also to create a fairy Christmas winter wonderland in our gardens, which will be there for 4 weeks with a big launch event, open to have various open days for the public, but also the main part to be an amazing experience for our families. And we want to encompass all of the Christmas campaign within all of that. So does anybody have any experience or tips or guidance or anything that could help us bring this to life?
Anyone want to talk to that? Okay, I'll start, but please come in and say something. So, Lou, I think that's excellent, and you can see how that would work. It's kind of like the adult hospice Light Up a Life opportunity, where there's an engagement opportunity, a chance to come in.
Yeah.
But you're creating a winter wonderland. So one of the things, so for example, for Naomi House last year, the story is about Santa's Grotto and the journey to Santa's Grotto, and there's a little train track on the floor, and there's that experience. So you've got the ability, have you, to get members of the public to come in, and you can then effectively you're creating a little kind of a Christmas attraction here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And you've got, so my first reaction to that was, that's going to be how you're going to manage the car parking and all that kind of, but I'm sure you've got the logistics.
We did a live event at the hospice 2 weekends ago, so we have had practice with it. We're
fantastic.
Quite
okay,
well practiced
stuff, yeah.
on that bit.
I mean, it's interesting because therefore the type of audience, so you've got the audiences, it seems to me, is that one, you've got, actually we're trying to deliver this amazing magical experience to the families, so that kids who come to the hospice who can't go to the grotto in the shopping centre or whatever it is, can actually have this incredible, wonderful winter experience themselves. Fantastic. And that's the altruism. So the reason why you're supporting it is because that's part of the Christmas experience we want to deliver to kids and families this year. Yeah. But people who are choosing to come themselves are going to be choosing because they've got their own kids and they want that to be, oh, that's a kind of nice thing. So I would expect the Venn diagram of those two audiences not to overlap that much. I'm just saying that, guys. I mean, you feel free to violently disagree with me, but I would expect that you're looking at audiences of parents with children who would want that to engage themselves, who are not classically the target donor audience. But for me, the opportunity always to get people into the hospice, because that hospice where people expect the Addams Family, don't they? They expect this kind of, Gothic tower with creaking doors and bats flying around, etc., etc. And actually, it's just this warm, lovely, welcoming, homely environment. So the opportunity to get people in, absolutely fab. Yeah, you'll get. I think there's a really good opportunity for media coverage with that as well.
Yeah.
So
and we're going to have all the kind of illuminations sponsored by corporates. So we're
fab. Love it. Oh, your sound's gone, Lou. Is that me? Lou, was that you disappearing or me not being able to hear anybody?
Okay.
Oh, I can hear some people. That's fine. Okay. Lou, thank you for that. Thank you for that. Does that again? So I think the question is no. There's no experience in this room about something directly. The my 15-year-old trying to call me. He can go away. No, you can't have a lift. So the Chestnut experience of the open days, we did again back in the day a couple of open days, but these were summer things, yeah, and they were summer opportunities. So we invited people to give money in the summer, because the summer holiday period is obviously, you know, really important time. Everyone books in for care, etc. Yeah, and so we asked people to contribute towards the fun experiences that will be delivered over the 6 weeks of the summer holidays. Cheers, Beth. But we also asked people then to take part and to invite people to come to the open days, and people did come in. What was really fascinating, I don't know, again, your experience of this, is the opportunity to come in to the kids' hospice for another purpose. Quite a few families chose that as the opportunity, who might be looking at accessing hospice care themselves, because it's a way of coming in kind of under the radar. You don't have to announce that this is us and we're thinking about it. You can just come in, have a look around. No one knows you're there. You can kind of get some experience. And then there was quite a few families that would come afterwards and say, do you know what, actually that looked really nice. Can I come and talk to you about some care?
That's interesting to put my proposition to the care team. Thank you.
It's just, yeah, do you know what I mean? Because sometimes, so you know, the word hospice is scary, and the word hospice implies, go away, William. It implies that that's it, you've given up hope. Oh, it's hospice, you've accepted end of life. Well, actually, we know that hospice care is about, you know, adding to life, no matter how long, and many kids, particularly if they've got cancer, go into remission and go on to live, you know, sort of fuller, longer lives. So it is an opportunity for families as well, that engagement.
Thank you.
Welcome. Anyone else? Does anyone else want to ask anything, want to share anything? I'd be really interested to know if is there anything that I've not talked about? I'd really like to know if you're sitting there going, well, we did something that was bloody magnificent, that was way better than anything I've seen here, and he didn't mention it at all. Come on, show off.
Raj has his hand up.
Come on, Raj.
Well, it's not about showcasing, but a question I wanted to ask, and I saw this yesterday, was about, I don't know if you've heard of the Big Give, and doubling donations, and I don't know how that works, because I'm kind of new back in the country, but I wondered if there was any mileage in that, or even talking about doubling donations in some way on Christmas appeals with a set of supporters that you might want to match a gift with.
The Big Give has worked. So we've not done a lot with Big Give. We have linked that up on a few occasions, but we haven't done a huge amount of that. But I know that's been very successful for a lot of the kids' hospices. It's the timing of that, isn't it? It's about donations given in a certain period and given through Big Give that apply for that doubling. So the challenge there is you've only got a small window within a much larger campaign in order to be able to get the Big Give. Doubling. Sorry, that's my kid texting me now. Has anyone else joined the Big Give? David, Keach, have you been involved in the Big Give? Have you got involved in that, haven't you? I'm picking on you, David.
That's okay. I was going to say, I was trying to find how to put my hand up. We did it last year at the Big Give, but we didn't. But what we did with responses to some of the to the campaign that we did, we then just put donations through the Big Give afterwards. We didn't get people to respond directly via the Big Give, because I think you have to make it via the Big Give website.
Okay.
But we did double some people's donations who responded to the appeal, but we process it through the Big Give.
Okay, so you can process donations that come in, and you can actually go to the Big Give yourself and do that, can you?
Yeah, because it has to be made by credit or debit card. So those responses we got who paid using that method, then we did that.
Okay.
So,
Raj, have you done? What's your experience? I know that you've delivered many campaigns in your time. So what's your experience of that doubling? I mean, how important is that to be able to say, you know, we can double or add value to your donation?
Yeah, it can really work really well, actually. Sorry, I keep knowing my hand, put it back. Yeah, no, but it relies on having that match funding, really. So whether you can find that, and normally you can find a couple of trustees who might be willing to give big gifts at that time, and you're saying that'll be matched by them or something like that around that, you know. You can write to several of your key supporters who you know are going to give big donations and say, can we use it to match? That kind of thing, you know. So it can work really well.
Yeah. But therefore, that means what you can't do is go to those individuals at the end of October and go, oh, by the way, we've got this thing going out this week. Can you match it? You've got to start having those conversations now, really, haven't you? Or if not before, you've got it's part of that ongoing thing. And I know one of the challenges with all of us, we have this kind of thing. Oh, we've got the summer thing, we've got the autumn thing, and now it's about people going back furlough and restarting community and events, fundraising, etc. But the worrying thing for you guys is that when we were delivering 11 years worth of Chestnut cold recruitment, we would have our first planning meeting for Christmas in the December of the previous year, because we'd be looking at booking. If you're booking 650,000 door drops, you've got to book them a year in advance because the nationals will come in and take those. So there's got to be that really, really long-term process. And the other thing about timing, I suggest, is, and the thinking about that, it's the story. So many times you talk to a clinical team in June or July and they'll say, right, was I working last Christmas? I can't remember. What year is it? So if you talk to them in early January and say, right, what happened? What was the moment? What was the bit that got you going, oh, isn't that brilliant? If we can grab that quite often then leads through to the case study. So I've done case study interviews for Christmas in February, you know, because that family's been identified by the care team as being, that's the story we need to tell, and let's remember that one. Yeah, so it never stops, unfortunately. Sorry, it's Christmas forever in Children's Hospice world. Anyone else want to ask anything or add anything at this point? Louise, go on.
Yeah, I've just got a thought about the response mechanisms this year.
Yeah.
Just because of, we've not said it yet, COVID, and will people be uncomfortable with the contact of the sending it back to vulnerable children in a hospice? I'm just wondering whether we just ignore the whole fact and just do it as normal, or whether we should do something else, or it was just kind of I mean, I know they work so well, I guess we should just carry on and do it, but I don't know if that would just be in people's minds, because I think our hospice wouldn't want to put them up because no one's got access at all to the hospice at the moment, or where the children are.
Interesting. Okay. Not an issue I've come across, Louise, to be honest with you.
Oh, okay.
And last year, no problem. We did have discussions with the team about where these would go and how we display these, but I think it was every clinical team we work with said, oh yeah, we'll find somewhere, don't worry. So again, in Santa's Grotto for a couple of places, there was a couple of corridors that were, oh yeah, we normally have our Christmas display here, so we'll use that wall there, etc. But no, it's not really an issue. Not a children's hospice, but an adult hospice capital build, there was a big perspex box with a posting slot in the top of it in reception. We've delivered 6.5 foot high Christmas cards that sit in reception, and all the messages get sort of pasted in there. Yeah, so when people come in through the front doors, there's a massive Christmas card. So there's lots of ways to do this, you know. Yeah. I'm not aware of any resilience or reticence to send in a message because of that.
Okay.
All right. Guys, if no one else has anything that they want to ask, I shall leave it there with you. Again, message from us is we are here to help and support if you need us, and we are glad to share knowledge and experience and insight that we have, and we have some, and we don't have all, and we are here to help you deliver the stuff that you can't deliver yourself. And you're free to come and talk to us about any of that, and there is never an obligation on you, and there's never a cost on you. So if you want to come and have a chat and a what if, please do, and we'll be delighted to speak to you. Okay. There's further information. There's another couple of examples of creative of peels that we've delivered for the children's hospices on our website. Please have a look at that. And this is one of a series of really brilliant and entertaining webinars that we've been delivering over the last year, which is me yakking at people for about an hour each time on various different topics. Have a look at those. They're all on our website. They're all on YouTube. If those are relevant to you, then please have a look. In the meantime, I shall love you and leave you. Thank you very much for turning up today. Good luck, whatever you're doing, however you do it, go and be magnificent. The care you're supporting, the kind of stories you're telling are fantastic. Go and be fantastic, be successful, and we'll speak to you really soon. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye, guys. Happy Thursday. See you soon.
Thanks.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.